everyone. Welcome back to the Growing Together podcast with me, Sunny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
A podcast where we talk about everything under the sun related to growth and becoming the best version of yourself. Today, we are going to be talking about community and how important it is when it comes to not just our personal lives, but if you're running a business and building a brand, how important creating a community around that. And there's so many different things we can talk about when it comes to community. But before we get started, how are you feeling today, Cesar?
I'm feeling pretty good. It is later in the afternoon, so I feel like we started this a little bit more, obviously later than we usually do, but
yeah,
it is cold too.
I couldn't get out of bed today. I was very exhausted. I still am very tired. I feel like I'm just chronically tired, and I don't know if it's especially because it's getting colder outside. I don't know where everyone who listens to this is, but it's definitely chilly here in Vegas, and it made our house a little bit too cold for my liking. Like, I feel like my nose is all like
I think, would you rather have a cold like this or it be like 1,000,000 degrees?
I mean, I don't like when it's hot because, like, at least when you're cold, you can put on a sweater. When you're hot, you can only have like the least amount of layers on.
I just feel like you have to deal with it at that point.
Yeah, there's no we can't control the AC.
Yeah.
But there's no like getting away from heat. So I will say I do like it to be probably colder more than I would hot, but I'm definitely not used to this type of cold. I feel like I was talking to my coworkers about it though too, about how it's much harder to get out of bed when it's cold outside. So I feel like that's been our struggle this week too, with the temperatures.
Yeah, being nice.
Going
It's been
down.
nice though. I like it.
He says this as if he didn't have a hard time getting out of bed.
No, I'm just saying
it's
been nice that it's been cold though.
But yeah, so I thought of this topic of community kind of for like a couple different reasons. We've had a lot of people on our podcast recently, whether it's Stephanie from Road to Tech or Dylan from Digital Podcaster, and even like just people I know personally in my life that I brought on. And finding Dylan and Stephanie was via social media. Like, I found them, I connected with them, and then I asked them like, hey, would you be interested in coming on? And since like having them on the show, like I feel like I interact with them more too, because like I just feel this connection, especially after the conversations that we've had with them. They were really eye-opening and inspiring, and I thought about how important it is to have not just those kind of conversations, but those kind of people around you, because they for me, they bring out the creativity in me. They give me all these ideas. I don't know how you feel about the conversations we've had lately.
No, I feel like especially having people that are in different spaces, that was really interesting to see, like from their perspective, what they've learned. And, from Dylan helping all these different podcasters or musicians in his background, to Stephanie and the tech industry, and, helping people learn how to code or whatever the case is. It's just been really cool to hear. And it is inspiring for sure. Because,
and I think it's like that different perspective. Like, often, like, yeah, these people have their own niches, but a lot of what you can learn from someone, no matter what their background is, can be applied to your life. And I think that's what's cool too, is like Stephanie may have a focus in tech, but a lot of what I gained from her conversation with her can be applied to my own life too. And Dylan, obviously he was more in our niche because he does podcasting, like he has a podcast about podcasting. But when I think about growth and all that it encompasses, a lot of the things that he said in our conversation was not just related to podcasts, but related to growing personally too, just becoming a better person and feeling good about yourself. And it's important to have those people around you. And I had this conversation in college with my roommate Delsa, because we were making the argument, like, no one can, like, be alone. Like, we were meant for connection as humans. We long for connection and we long for belonging. And when we don't have that, that's when kind of that loneliness creeps in, and, like, maybe you have, like, these negative thoughts, and all this kind of thing. And Delsa was like, I think she said that she's like, no, I could do it. I could live alone. Like, I could do it. Like, not just live alone, but like have no contact with anyone or the outside world. And I feel like personally that would be so isolating. What do you think?
I think it's possible, but it'd be excruciating, like painful for most people after maybe a few months of doing it, you know, because there's people that have lived on islands and
You can go insane.
that's what I'm trying to say is that I think the only way you're able to survive is by being with either another person or community. You know, even like the most remote parts of the world, like where we still don't have contact with people that live there because like the indigenous groups that live there, they like have a community.
They
of people.
survive
They
off of
survive
having
off
that community
yeah.
of people that all align with like the same things, that have the same kind of understanding of why they wake up every morning. And I think that, like, I'll say it like a million times probably in this podcast, it's so important. And I saw a video this week, which is just crazy that I saw this video, and it was a woman in Africa, and she was making TikTok, obviously, it was on TikTok, and she said, like, you know, there's this whole narrative of what Africa is, but Africa is a large continent.
Yeah.
Like, it's huge, and there's so many different parts of Africa.
Yeah.
And she goes, this is the Africa I know. And she talks about how, like, the community aspect and how, like, my neighbor's child is my child, and my child is my neighbor's child. You know, like, everyone, like, it kind of relates back to, like, it takes a village to raise a child, you know? And I remember you talking about in Mexico specifically, like, the whole pueblo would, like, you know, kind of be raising the child, or, like, you know, helping it get, like, a good head on their shoulders, you know?
Yeah, no, they would, we've talked about this before, but yeah, they would, not to say like pitch in and like, you know, but if you needed something like, hey, can you look after my child? I have to go into the city, and like, you could trust your neighbors that well.
Like, it's even, it comes in the simplest form. It's like being able to go to your neighbor and be like, can I have a cup of sugar? You know? And I feel like it's so funny to me because I feel as a society now, like, we don't know a lot of our neighbors. It's like, and it's not a bad thing, but like, we don't live in that world where I feel like, oh, like, let me just go ask the neighbor for a cup of sugar. And I know that's not everyone's, like, situation. You know, some people, like, in my neighborhood back home in Florida, for a while there, we did have that kind of community with our neighbors because we knew a lot of them. We spoke with a lot of them. You could go, like, when I was a kid, like, we would knock on my neighbor's door. Caitlin, she lived right next to us, and I'd be like, can we swim in your pool? Like, you know, it wasn't like a nuisance thing, but like, it was like this connection that you had with your neighborhood. And I feel like it's so crazy how with social media, like, it's meant to keep you connected, but it also creates a lot of disconnect. Online too. But I also want to talk about when it comes to communities, I know that you have experience. I feel like some of the, not the earliest forms, it's going to sound so stupid in the way that I want to say it, because obviously the earliest forms of community are probably, you know, within like the beginning of human civilization. But I think communities as we see it now have changed and transformed as like technology has. And you mentioned that to me before when I was talking to you about this idea on the podcast of talking about community, how you were on like a Facebook group for cars and the car community.
Early Facebook, not early, but you know,
when they started groups, like
when groups were like, I think it was like in 2010, 2007, 8, 9, something like that. But yeah, no, I had a car and I thought it was nice. It was a Miata, early 1990 model, and I was like, oh, there's got to be like groups of people that hang out or something like that, because I've heard of Cars and Coffee growing up in high school and stuff like that, but which is like another community thing of people that do once a month in pretty much every big city. So it was really interesting. I ended up finding a community of people that drove the same car, the same model.
Wait, it was the same car?
It was the same car.
So you found a specific Miata community?
Yes.
I was under the impression that it was like a different cars. You were just in a very exclusive Miata community.
It was people who just drove a Mazda Miata, whether it was like the early 1990 model or the newer one, up to like, you know, most recent. It was just people loved the car, how it drove, whether they like modifying it, taking it to like, you know, legit closed course like races that are like safe and all that. So it was really cool. There's people from all different parts of the world, different backgrounds, and it was a place where people just met up and talked about their lives. And we would literally sometimes these meets would go on until like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Where would you guys meet at?
We would go to In-N-Out. We would meet like at like, you know, like places all over Spring Mountain. You
I
know?
think that
So
I told
it's-
you about this on like one of our very first podcast episodes. Is that like I always knew that there were like car communities, but in my hometown of like Apopka, they would meet at the gas station Wawa,
yeah, yeah.
and like it was always at the oddest time, but you knew it was like a car meetup because of how it was like structured.
Yeah.
I guess. How do you like decide where to meet up?
That's a really good question. I mean, that's the thing about the community is the first thing when you create or you would like join the community on Facebook back then, there was like a thing pinned at the top saying like, you know, we don't, you know, X, Y, these are the rules for the community.
Yeah.
Right. And then like we meet up once a week at this time at this location. So it was whoever started the group was the one that like decided where it was going to be held at.
I mean, it's a great way to find people who have the same interests and something that you can bond over. Because I remember when I first started at FSU, there was a page called FSU Class of 2020, and it was for FSU freshmen, obviously, that were going to be graduating in the class of 2020, and you joined, and you could find like people would post all types of stuff,
Yeah.
whether like they needed to know like, oh, does someone have this textbook, or like, you know, and it was a way to like connect with like people that maybe you wouldn't have connected with before, because it's obviously a huge campus. And then there also was this one club I joined for a very short period of time, and I found it on Facebook too. On FSU Class of 2020, someone posted about another group they created of like FSU Running Club, and like FSU has a thing like if you can get 10 people sign up for your club, you can become an official club on campus.
Oh,
you know,
sure.
you can get funding and stuff like that through the university. And I joined that, and I'm like, that's a great way to meet people. And even one of my coworkers, I was telling him I'm having a hard time making friends as an adult living in a new state, and he was like, my sister is actually part of like a running club here in Texas, and like you might see if like they have different things you could do like for adults, like that are clubs that you can join. I'm like, that's so smart.
Yeah,
And
they have those here too. They have all kinds of different clubs. That was one when I was like super into running, which is a sad thing to say, but
won't be there
Yeah.
again one day.
but yeah, no, there was like this one group. I think it's still around, and I believe they ended up blowing up the group into making it like a national thing because it started here. I believe it was called I'm Possible, but it's like impossible with the little quotation
Yeah,
in
I
the
know
front.
what you mean.
So like it wasn't just running though. It was you had to do like CrossFit. So you would join. You would it was free obviously. But they would have like these people speak at the end of it. It was like an hour and a half thing too. So you'd go work out like super hardcore, and then at the end you'd cool down and just hang out with people and get to know like who's in the group, because it was like over 100. By the time I joined, it was like 150 people just
That's
going.
crazy.
Yeah, and this was like in 2018. 2018ish, something like that. So I think it's still around, I believe, but there's definitely a power in community for sure, and whether it's finding new people to meet or learning something new.
Yeah, or just like, you know, yeah, again, it comes back to finding people to connect with. At the end of the day, we all want to feel like some sense of belonging. And I feel personally, when I was growing up, I always felt like a black sheep. Like, and I think this is relevant to the conversation. I had wrote it down in my notes because I was reading about the communities and why they're important, and it was like, you know, we all want that sense of belonging. We all want to feel like a part of something, a part of
Yeah.
something bigger than ourselves most of the time too. And when I was growing up, I definitely didn't feel that. Like I had friends, you know, and I had groups that I hung out with, but I think I was telling you this. I was never that like favorite friend. I was never, if I was any person in the group, I was a person that was going to get left out. And that's fine. Like, I'm not saying this to have a pity party. I feel like whenever I say this, Andy's like, it's not a pity party. It's not a party at all. But I had the ability to connect with a lot of people and a lot of different types of group. So when I describe like my high school life, or like even for as long as I remember, high school, middle school, elementary school, is I had different groups that I fit in, but I never was a core member of any group. And I honestly don't think I found like the sense of belonging I was looking for until I got to college and I found friends that I felt like cared about always including me and cared about like my existence, I guess, too. And it did feel like, while it was small, it was like me and like 4 other friends. It felt like having that community because we would hang out like every Sunday, and like we also all worked together. So we had like not the same interest per se in the job that we had, but like, you could relate to the issues that we had at work because we all were working at the same place. And it definitely made you feel like you're not alone. You're not the only one like going through the same thing.
It's definitely key to have, whether it's people that you end up finding a common interest with, like you were saying, like for me it was the car community, but it does definitely, just to hit on that note, it does definitely make you feel like you're not alone, because at one point I remember I was like, oh man, I'm just like, I like driving in this car.
I'm just this person with a Miata.
Yeah, but no, it's just like I felt like with any kind of thing, whether it's Legos, I mean, I imagine there's like a Lego community.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Huge,
those
like
are super popular.
and people that build them and post
It's actually
videos.
funny that you mentioned it, because when I was talking about like, because I want to get into brands that build great communities, Legos was one of the ones that came up.
That's funny. That's funny. That's the first thing that came to mind. Like I mentioned, like because I know on YouTube there's people that like just build Lego and showcase like a time lapse of them building this insane thing that takes hours or days or weeks to build because
we
of
should
how.
do that one time. Not hours or weeks, maybe a small set we built together.
Yeah, I mean, where are we gonna put it is the question.
Me me just knocking it down. Like, Caesar, I'm so done with this.
Some of these are huge.
No, I know.
Alex from Graham Stefan's video editor, when I was working with him recently, he is a super avid Lego collector. He had Lego all over his house. Like he had a Lego piano, which I never knew.
It's probably worth like hella too.
Oh no, yeah, that's the thing I asked him though. I was like, do you have, because there's people that collect Lego and don't open it. They just collect it because they know if they sit on it,
like
they can
Pokemon.
resell it. It literally is. But then there's people that do that, but also will buy an extra set for them to actually build.
Yeah.
And
then there's the resellers.
And there's the resellers that just collect it and put it in a warehouse and then wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a few people that do all of that. So
yeah, I know everyone that does each of that.
Yeah.
Where were we?
But yeah, no, Lego. Yeah, we're talking about Lego. And no, it's just interesting the fact that like I was never into Lego growing up at all, but like just seeing all the really cool stuff that you can do with that. I love Connects. Connects.
But you also were just talking about how like, you were you with your Miata.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Off track. No, but yeah. So I just felt like there was some kind of need to like of belonging because I had that car, and like I was like, oh, let me go look for people that drive the same car. And
do you think if there wasn't something, you would have started it?
No, I wouldn't have. That's the thing. Okay. But there's always that one person. For example, many people don't know, maybe do know this, but out of all the cars that you think would have a super like cult following, what car do you think
has the best following?
Had or has one of the biggest cult followings?
Jeeps.
Well, besides Jeeps one of like, everyone, especially the Wrangler, PT Cruiser.
PT Cruiser is the ugliest car.
The thing is, the PT Cruiser, not to get too into cars, but when it came out, it was like a revolutionary design. The thing is that they kept the design for so many years that people started to hate it. It got outdated. But when it came out, there was like groups of like thousands of PT Cruisers that would just drive around like and just do
crazy.
Things. Yeah, isn't that crazy to think? It's like
but that kind of goes to show that there's something for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the thing: is I think communities are great, and I think it's super important to have, no matter how small it is, to have a group of people that you feel safe with, that you feel connected with, that you feel belonging with. Yeah. And sometimes finding that is a journey in itself, because we go through a lot of relationships in our lives, and I say relationships as in like friendships, all types of relationships in our lives, and some of them don't last, and that's a part of life. So finally finding somewhere that you feel like you belong can be just difficult in itself. But I also realized in different communities I was a part of, there's still like, I feel like this is a human thing, so it's not necessarily like our fault sometimes to have within communities themselves, there's cliques.
That's true.
And
that too,
that's kind of like the worst feeling sometimes, especially obviously if you're not part of the clique too. Like it's even worse. But when I was a cheerleader, for instance, and I feel like this makes cheerleaders look really bad, but obviously there's always gonna be people that don't like you. but I feel like there was like that click within the team. Like you're supposed to be, the idea is that everyone's a part of the team.
Everyone works together towards like,
but at the end of the day, there's still cliques. There's still
Yeah.
people that like form these groups within the community, and it can make other people feel like left out or
Yeah.
like, like they don't belong as much. And that can be such a sad feeling, such like to leave people out when we're kind of meant, like everyone wants to feel like that connection with others. And I'm not saying you have to like everyone, but it's ironic that within communities there can be other circles that don't necessarily act as a way a community should.
Yeah.
Like I remember Dylan on our last podcast talking about how the podcast community was so great to him, and like he hadn't had that experience in other communities, other interests of his. And I think you definitely find that depending on like what community you join. Some are more like, what's it called, exclusive. Like, well, even if you think about like Facebook, like the simplest form of like what we have as community today, some of the groups, obviously they want to make sure that the people that join it, like they kind of have these questions of like, why do you want to be
why do you want to join,
or like, and they can decide like whether you get to be a part of it or not. I'm like, well, who's to say that I can't? Like, obviously not who's to say I can't, but who's to say like my answers are good enough,
Yeah, I guess one was just to weed out people. That's funny because I think, for example, in the Miata community, I became a moderator of the community at one point. So
how did you determine?
Well, because they changed it where you're able to ask questions before you join.
Yeah.
Before it was just like or accept or deny.
Uh-huh.
But before you're like, well, why you would ask them then later on, like, what brought you to this community? One, for spam reasons, right? Because there's spam.
Yeah, because you don't want like just fake accounts.
Accounts. But then the other one was because like we want at one point we wanted people that only had that car. It's just to keep it, just to keep it like.
What if they couldn't afford the car? How shitty is that of you?
No, the thing is, look, this car at the time when I bought one, it was super cheap. No, it's
Caesar,
insane.
super cheap is not a word. I couldn't afford a car.
It
when
was.
I was
You can
in high
find.
school.
You can find a 19 early back. This was like before COVID, before all this stuff. In 2016, you could find a 1990 Mazda Miata for $500. And driving, maybe no AC, maybe need some work, but like there's people that would buy them like this and then join the community. But then there's people that just like, oh, I just want to see like if I can sell stuff in this community. I'm like, no, we don't want people that just want to join just to sell like random stuff. But
obviously, like I think
you're trying to find one for $500 is pretty much impossible
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what
Insane.
I'm saying is like, I mean, I'm on a couple marketing groups on Facebook. And I joined them specifically to see like what kind of opportunities are out there when I was looking for a job. And each one was like kind of guarded. Like you couldn't just join. You had to have like answers to like these questions. And I'm not saying that's wrong. You definitely want to make sure that like I'm qualified to be in this channel, like that my intentions are like good. And a lot of it is like, you're not trying to sell your stuff or like, because you do get a lot of that, like, oh, buy my product. But I think the other part too is that, what I found in these groups is sometimes when you do try to showcase like just your work, not even sell something, like it gets like denied, and you're like, I just want to show what I do,
it's funny that literally what you just said reminds me of Reddit. Like Reddit communities, in my opinion, are, depending on which ones you're looking to join, are some of the worst because there's certain communities where like it's literally designed showcase your content, like showcase your videos, and then one of the moderators is like, oh, this is just self-promotion. It's like, isn't this what this whole freaking Reddit subreddit's for, is for people to show their videos? So how, like,
it's so crazy. I mean,
really
I wonder
stupid.
if that's like I've never really read into Reddit.
But it's like one of the biggest, talking about community, it's like one of the biggest.
Was that its original purpose, was for community?
Yeah, for people to post about all different types of things, whether it's about how to do things to build, like, our sewing, our videos, like all
it
these
was an art target that I was a part of.
Target. So like exactly talking about community, like you were a part of the Target employee community that like to talk about how good or how bad or whatever.
I don't think anyone was talking about how good it was on there.
It was just about how like
it was a lot of funny posts on there.
But I mean, that's in Reddit at one point was a really cool place to like. I still have a Reddit account, mainly just in the video editing side of things, because there's questions that are really every now and then like to debug Premiere or whatever the case is. But Yeah, but besides that, it's a very toxic place.
Very toxic
It's like, yeah, this is so stupid. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I've heard things like posts getting taken down or like, not you're not allowed to post on certain things. I think that even other like companies, if we switch to like a brand perspective
Yeah.
or like kind of understanding the value of community, like for instance, YouTube has that community tab of like where you can post stuff and like obviously your audience that you have can engage with it. I do think it could be a little bit better because I'm not entirely sure how that's supposed to build community if like it's pretty much the same as getting a comment on a video. It's just on a post,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a whole other subject, but
Yeah, but we definitely are seeing like platforms understand how valuable communities are, and I think they'll only continue. I would think that social media at first was meant to make us connected and make us like have these outlets, but I think also it makes us realize like, I mean, there's a comparison game, but I do kind of want to talk about like, the brands that have built great communities.
I was
So
literally
you
gonna
brought
say
up
that.
Lego. Can you think of another brand that has a great community or like a cult following?
Oh man.
Nothing. There's
No, I mean, like, I immediately resort to what I know best in regards to like technology. So I know like camera brands have some of the biggest cult followings. Like people will,
Yeah,
like,
so if
ride
like
or
you're a
die,
Canon person, you're a Canon
I'm right. No,
person.
but there's some-
Or if you're like a
No, for me, I love all tech. So I'm not like super hardcore into like one thing. However, my first camera was a Panasonic, so I do like have like a little bias towards them.
Yeah.
But I'm not like ride or die. There's some people that
Yeah.
were like, you can't talk about this camera because I'm like, bro, like I'm just.
I would say that like my one like ride or die company that I will always buy products from for the most part is Apple.
I was actually gonna say Apple has probably one of the biggest cult following.
Like-
Apple, Tesla, what else? Lululemon, maybe. I don't know.
Lululemon, yeah, that was a really big thing. It's funny because a lot of these brands are just so expensive and like, yeah, they have such a following, but I think it's like, it's a different type of like community, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't buy an Apple product to be a part of the community. Although if you don't have an Apple product, you'll definitely feel left out because I would say so many people own it. And I think that's almost the attraction to it is so many people have it, so you also want to have it. I remember when I was in middle school, I didn't get my first iPhone. This is gonna make me sound so dumb too, but I didn't get my first iPhone. Like I had a phone in like middle school. I had a phone pretty young because I like walked to school and like my parents were always at work. So I had a phone when I was pretty young. But the first iPhone I got was actually in high school, was ninth grade. And it was the iPhone 4. So the iPhone 3 had been out. And I got the iPhone 4. But before that, I felt so left out because all my friends were starting to get like the new iPhone, the iPhone 4. And I didn't have it. And I was like, I feel so lame, And so I think that's what like attracts people to it too, is just knowing that other people have it. I had a conversation with my friend Laura. Was like for like weeks. She was like, "Should I get the iPad? Like, should I? Like, I might not need it, but I want it. Like, it's just this want to
Yeah.
have it,
It's like, I mean, not to say like Apple products are like a status symbol or anything like that. Some people do think of them that way, like they buy the most expensive thing because it's Apple, but
Yeah.
there is a functionality behind it.
Yeah.
However, there is that, not cult following, but like that community around it where it's like, oh, like, I love Apple products because, they work really well or whatever the case is.
I mean, I've had great experience with Apple. Like my personal experience with Apple has always been good. Like I got my first like MacBook Pro, like the laptop, when I was in college. I got it about like my sophomore year, and I still have the same one, and it's lasted me so long. And that was my attraction like of the laptops, because I knew I had friends who were like, yeah, I've had this laptop for 5 years and it's still like working good. And so like every laptop I had before that I didn't have for a long time, so I was like, oh, I can find something that's gonna be like worth it. And then the phones, like obviously I like the interface, so you get used to like something too, of like where now at this point changing away from it would just be uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's literally what I was gonna say. Because before I got into any sort of Apple phone or device, I was super into Android. Yeah, which the thing is, I'm not like a hardcore Apple person.
The
Mainly.
thing is, like, the thing is, people who like have Apple are usually hardcore Apple, and people who have Android are usually hardcore Android.
No, I
Like,
mean,
I would never
I'm in the
switch.
middle. If I was able to afford to have different devices, like people like upgrade every year just to have a different device or have an extra one for, creative reasons, like I would love to have like some of the newer Samsung like
To just test
phones.
out like functionality.
Yeah, functionality, and also like there's people that literally test drive devices for like 6 months. They'll swap their SIM card. But now the new Apple iPhone doesn't have a SIM card. It has an eSIM, so you don't actually have to swap it like before anymore. But yeah, it's just I guess everything has their pros and cons. Like every community out there has their pros and cons, because if you're joining a certain community for like status, I guess there is a value in that if you value that. But most people that join some sort of communities because they want to learn something or get a deeper understanding of, for example, like a car. For me, it was like I want to know more about this car, and I learned so much throughout the whole time that I was part of that community.
What do you think about? Because I just thought of something as like you were saying that. What do you think about like communities you have to pay into?
Oh, you mean like a where you have to pay a fee in order to join? Is that what you mean?
I mean, like sort of like,
I'm
for
trying to
instance,
think
I
of
think
one.
of like sororities. For instance, like, you can rush a
okay.
sorority
Yeah.
in college, and like you're a part of like this big like house of like girls, but you also pay like $10,000 and like
Or more, depending.
like,
on
and I
right?
wanted to be a part of a sorority. I really did,
insane.
but then it's like at the same time, are you paying for friendship? I mean, I don't know. I've had people who had great experiences. I know people that had bad experiences. It's across the board, but like I think there is something to be talked about, like, paying into, to be a part of something.
It would be the same as those that buy Apple products because they're paying to buy into that
Oh yeah, I guess
ecosystem.
so.
And then if they want to, or there's people, I mean, some people just pay because they want a good computer. I mean, for me, like I wouldn't have been able to join the community I found if I didn't have the same car.
The Miata.
So, because it would have been weird if I rolled up in my, little truck or something. Like, why are you part of this? There's something that molds a community together, and it's usually around something. In this
Yeah.
case, it was around a car. Or in this case, in another
So
case, it could be around.
I guess you're saying like basically most communities have like some type of pay aspect.
Yeah, most of them have something that you have to pay or buy to really be a part of it.
Yeah.
There's some that you. I guess there's some that you don't necessarily like. There's like writing communities and where you can meet up, or marketing communities where you'll learn
Yeah.
about marketing and whatnot. But you have to have learned and paid for something in order for you to even be a part of that. There's some like knowledge that you've had to have paid for, or just gotten for free online.
I think that's the crazy thing that we've done to communities, though. It's like we've decided to gatekeep information.
Yeah, I mean there is certain information that is accessible on the internet.
Yeah, there
but
is, but there's always information that is like gatekept.
That is, yeah. That I think for the most part, all information has some sort of gatekeeper. Whether it's the internet itself, because you got to pay to get on the internet. You can't unless you go to a library and get a library card. But
Yeah.
like, even then, you still have to pay for a library card. So to get on the internet for free, if you didn't have like internet at home or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's something always holding information back. Even books too. You have to pay for books before. Like if you want to learn about.
Like
person,
there's an episode of Friends where Joey buys an encyclopedia.
Oh, encyclopedias.
And there
that's
used to be like A to Z, so like everything, and he only had money for one, so he bought like Z, I think, or I
Yeah.
don't remember. And it's like, it's crazy to think about though, because like I feel like now we get more upset with things, people like gatekeeping things because we feel that things should be so accessible.
Yeah.
And I think in a way that they should. Like, why are you trying to keep something from me when I'm like, we're all trying to learn and we're all trying to grow. There's like memes about, like, in the simplest form, there's memes about people who like, oh, I like your shirt, where'd you get it? And they don't want to say because they don't want you to have the shirt.
Oh, because they don't want you to have the
Yeah, and it's like, but I feel like with like information sometimes, especially like, in a business world, they're like, oh, an ebook, like, you want to know the secret to success? Give me your email first, and then you can have this information. That way they can, like, sell to you. And I understand it from a business perspective, but also I feel like it brings that, like, an inauthentic approach, because I feel like people, this is just me being naive though too. I feel like people should want to give people to help better other people, you know, without that like that intention of I need something in return. So I think my issue with like having to buy into something no matter what it is like I feel like people should want to give without the idea of like give what you, like you should always give with understanding you might not get something back, you know?
Yeah, no. And the thing is that there is people out there that do that. Like there's some notable people that just immediately have recently blown up on the internet and gone viral. I'm blanking out on his last name, but his name is Alex. He's a business person. He's like in the business space on the internet. But what drove him to blow up is the fact that he was just giving out knowledge, like just doing all these webinars, seminars, like all of this stuff for free and telling everyone. He wasn't like gatekeeping. He wasn't like, you have to pay in order for me to give you this information. He was just giving all the info out for free. You can find it online. And then if you did want to like invest in his portfolio, because what he does, he has portfolio companies where he gets money, invests it, and makes people money based on like, you know, using data and science and all this stuff. So if you did like want to give him your money, then you obviously would give him your money. Like, so, but the thing is that his whole thing was he was giving all this information out for free.
Yeah. And then he was like, do what you will with this information, but I also could do this for you.
But then he's like, but I also can do this for you. I run a portfolio company where I do X, Y, and Z and have done X, Y, and Z numbers in this space.
That makes sense. Like, okay, I've given you everything, but knowing what it takes, you can also pay me to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And
see, that makes sense.
See?
That makes sense though, because okay, if people have the choice of having the information and also not just wanting to do it themselves, like, yeah, fine. But yeah, it's crazy to think that like we pay, like the first person that comes to mind when I think about this conversation is like Tony Robbins.
Oh yeah.
And I think his seminars are like $5,000 starting. And to me, it's sad because the people going in there want to change their lives, you know, like he's like a self-help person that they really want to become that better person. And the idea of paying $5,000 to become a better person when you truly can do it by yourself, it almost feels like taking advantage, you know, because what if someone like that's their last $5,000 and then
people
the information
have done that,
and then the information doesn't help, or like it wasn't the right thing, but they don't know that because they don't know what you're going to be providing, you know. So it's just like it feels, and I know like at the end of the day it's a business too and people have to make money, but it just feels so not right in my opinion. Yeah,
I mean, that's, again, I respect anyone who's in the self-help self-help like industry.
See, it's a game.
No, but there's authentic people out there that like, you know, then again, like there's another one where you have to pay in order to get help. It's like not psychology, but a psychiatrist or a therapist.
Well, like, but like they're not saying, "Hey, give me $5,000."
Well, maybe over time.
But like that's much more manageable, and like also like it's a different thing. I don't think it's the same thing as like,
I know it's different.
Like you know, like some people need therapy, and sometimes insurance covers it, and you don't pay anything, and like So, and then at the end of the day, they also are a healthcare professional. Yeah. You know, and they studied to do that. So.
I mean, you'd hope, you know, after a few sessions that you'd, you know, if you
I just think it's crazy too when this is kind of a little bit far-fetched from communities, but how basically there's just people that sell. Sometimes you're like, what gives you the authority, you know, what gives you
like what, for example?
Well, even like Tony Robbins, you know, like
like what gave him the authority
what gives you the authority to like say like to know, like, you know, because
have you read any of his books or like ever heard his
I've heard some of like his like old talks, his old content, and like I mean I think people like, especially in the self-help space, like I'm not saying he doesn't do any good, like he probably does. If he was able to profit off of that, like there's probably some good information there, but I also think that there's people out there that they're looking for a quick buck, you know, and so there's this kind of rise of people selling like ebooks and courses and like and it's like, how do I know, why is this worth money? Because, you know, I don't know, it's very weird.
I think people for the most part, like people listening, whether it's you and me or you and me, Sunny, for example, I think sooner or later, or even sooner rather than later, people can provide value they can sell to somebody. I wouldn't say early on, for example, like Tony Robbins, just because I've read a lot about him a long time ago. He was, a lot of the stuff he was doing was like just trying to legitimately help people. Well, not to say he's not doing that now anymore, but he wasn't getting really paid much. Like he was just like either doing it for free sometimes or whatever the case was. But I was like early like 90s, right? But I mean, like I even feel like people like us, we can create something that you can sooner or later put behind some sort of paywall. Whether it's, for example, like someone that we had recently on the podcast who's teaching people how to get into coding or whatnot. Like there's a lot of value to learn from someone who did it from being self-taught versus going through like a school or whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, yeah, I'm saying in those situations, there's value in, providing, like, getting paid for all that you have to offer. I just think in some cases, there's people out there that aren't providing a lot of value and expecting to.
Then there's that though. You do get your run-of-the-mill like courses where they scrap content from the internet that's already available and then just put it in a course and then maybe reward some of it and then be like, wait, this is the same exact content that's for free on YouTube.
That's why I've literally too, because I like a good online course, but I've also been so I have a stipend from work that I can use for learning and personal development and professional development. And when it comes to finding a course, I'm so cognizant of what makes this course valuable, that I haven't been able to find a course that I feel like I trust, because so many people are creating courses.
That's true.
What makes this one better than the next one, and it's really hard.
And how updated
it's
is
so
it
crazy.
too,
Yeah, it's so crazy. Of all the information, now having to choose which information is going to be the most valuable to me.
Also, too, is what, again, this goes back to the question that statement you made, is what gives that person or group of people the authority to, what makes them a expert.
Yeah, it's like that episode of The Office when Michael's doing Toby's exit interview, and he goes, "What gives you the right?" It's like that's kind of what I think about when I see some stuff, because I work with a lot of brands too and a lot of companies, and a huge thing for Google, for instance, is authority. Or is the information coming from a source of authority, and how that is determined is
authoritative sources.
Yeah, but how authoritative sources are even determined is just the whole thing. But it's just interesting, and building that authority I think is important. But I think building authority also goes back to authenticity. I feel like also in just the realm of communities, there's a lack of. Some communities can be created, I guess, for the wrong reasons.
With maybe not the right direction, in mind, or something like that, or.
Just the right intention,
Intentions. Yeah, I mean,
I think intention are just important with community.
Yeah, no, I mean, people often can see right through that, if joining a specific group or community, you can immediately tell, oh, wait, me paying, X amount just to join this group was just to get your, that entry fee, and that's it. And there's a little bit of value found behind it. Not to get too deep into the weeds of paywalls, but I remember paying for a person who I still value their information, and I'm still part of the community, is Sean Cannell's YouTube content strategy. Back in the day, I paid $50 back in the day for it, and now it's $1,000. So that's how much value, and people pay for it, and that because there's a lot of value in this community. Yeah. So back when I joined it, I thought it was a screaming deal because I knew this guy was an expert.
But I think also when you bring that up too, there's people who, for instance, we call that a community, right?
Yeah.
And but there's certain aspects that make it a community, right?
Yeah.
But there's also some things that you might pay into that you think it's gonna be this community, and it ends up just not being. It ends up being that one-time fee. Here's this, but you never connect with those people again.
It's almost they kind of leave you in the just out to here's the entrance into the community, and then it's that's it. You don't see anything else from them ever again.
I talked about with Stephanie how I did a digital marketing boot camp, and I kind of thought that would be a community of people that we'd see each other's career journeys and be connected with. And I connected with some of them on LinkedIn, but I don't talk to a lot of them, and it's kind of sad because you want that to be a community, in that aspect, you want it to be a professional community that you can network with and also just relate to in your career goals.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, especially
like an ungodly amount for that.
But that's what I was gonna say. Like that's another good example of, not to say that you got. You said I don't know. I forgot exactly what you said about the boot camp, but there's difference in there's other cases like that. You know, where people pay in to be a part of a community, and then they don't feel like the value wasn't there. Whether they weren't. I don't know. Like service is the right word to use, but like maybe they
didn't get what they initially thought it was
yeah.
gonna be, and I think that's a core part of having a community, is that it should, you know,
provide the value that it's
provide a value to you and to your life, but also connect you with people. I think at the end of the day, we all need that connection.
Yeah.
Like we all want to connect with people, and like sometimes communities lack like guidance of like how to interact with each other on a community, and like that can lead to kind of things going AWOL.
Yeah.
You know, people not treating other people with kindness, and you know, it's just it's interesting because community is so needed, yet sometimes it can feel so hard to find. Like I still feel like I don't have like a community here that like I have.
I mean, do you think part of it is to do that? I mean, not to say we have, you have all the time in the world to drive around town and like.
Yeah, let me just go find some people.
Or even, because there is Facebook groups and communities that I think you could be a part of, but I just don't think you have the time to just drive around and.
I mean, I also think of like true crime. Don't want to put myself in dangerous situations.
Well, obviously you vet the community and
yeah.
you can see them. That's a cool thing, at least that I still to this day. One thing that I do love about Facebook is the community groups that are there, and that there is a lot of really cool things you can learn from people on these groups and whatnot, and then they have meetups. They have meetups, and you meet the people that also followed either this specific person or this similar goal, of learning marketing or whatever the case is. So I still think there's value there. It's just not everyone has all the time. Not everyone has enough time in the day or the resources in the week or day to do.
I mean, for most of your life, you're kind of put in situations to find that community, like when you're in school or like sports, or there's all these situations that you're put in to build a community. And I think with the pandemic too, after the pandemic, like everyone realized how lonely it was to be stuck inside, and how lonely and isolating it was to not be able to go and do certain things that we were so used to being
true.
able to do. Yeah. Like for instance, like you could have been someone that hated going outside and never went outside before COVID, but then knowing that you couldn't go outside was also just a whole different thing too, of like, man, now that I can't, I really want to. And like, you may have been like a homebody before, but knowing that like you can't like go out, it's just whole thing. And I think we were stuck inside for a long time, and it kind of made people realize how much they need each other.
Yeah, how much they need community.
Yeah,
how much they need people, and either to like seek help, or there's a really good thing about being a part of something bigger than yourself. You know?
And like I think, for instance, I actually want to read this book sometime soon. I wanted to start it this weekend, but I have it on my bookshelf, and it's called The Startup Community. And I think that's another like big community that I specifically see on LinkedIn, and like I feel like I also can relate to because I'm part of a startup, and like being a part of a community like that is so eye-opening. Like I'm not even like actively talking to people who work at other startups, but just being within like my company, I feel like it's community because we all can relate to the same growing pains, to the same struggles, because we're all going through it. Like if something isn't working at like our company, every team feels it because they're all so interconnected and intertwined because of like how our startup is formatted. And it's just, it feels like when I talk to my coworkers and they can relate, it feels like a it's nice to them to understand what I'm going through, because you might have like even people that you care for, when you explain it to them, they won't have that same sense of understanding because they're not in it. If like I talk to most people, for instance, even when I talk to to people about what I do, they don't really know what it is. So if I talk about work, they won't really make sense to them. But when I'm talking to my coworker, he understands it because we do the same work and like we do the same job. And it's nice to be able to, whether it's complain about or like to like shoot ideas off of another person, that builds like that connection. Like this person really understands me. I think that also goes back to the foundation like of community, is that we want to be understood. We want people to understand us for all that we are, despite how complex we are as individuals. And I remember working, I need a jargon so I can put like nickels in it every time I mention Target. But I remember working at Target and feeling so misunderstood. And I thought to myself, like, if these people just understood me more, like, it would bring more, like, empathy and more understanding. That's kind of, like, repetitive. But I think a lot of, like, disconnects that we have with people are from lack of understanding.
That's true. Yeah.
Not understanding situations or not understanding people or not having empathy. There's a lot of things.
Yeah. I think a lot of it does obviously have to do with the fact that if you don't understand someone's intentions or where they're coming from, things can definitely get misconstrued. Misconstrued can get misconstrued. For example, even that word, but you knew where I was going with this. But yeah, it's like if you don't understand someone's, what they're trying to say is coming from a good place.
Yeah.
If you just feel like it's always coming from a bad place, then like obviously there's going to be issues that occur.
Yeah. And sometimes I think I learned this too, is sometimes like you can be coming from the best place and it still not be seen that way. And sometimes that's out of our control. Mm-hmm. Like, I consider myself a fairly nice person. Like, I feel like I'm a ray of sunshine. But, some people don't necessarily understand when I have came off the wrong way sometimes. And I have to, you have to kind of look inward and be like, oh, did I say that in a way that could be, misconstrued? Like, did that, kind of also look at it from the other person's perspective. Like, how would I have taken this? How would I have received this? So I think in a difficult thing about, connecting with one another sometimes can be understanding how they're going to perceive something or how they're going to take something. And it comes to, knowing, it's just knowing your audience. The same way a brand has to know their audience to create a product, to create a brand voice and tone. It's when we deal with other people too, we need to know who we're speaking to. I don't talk to my mom the same way I talk to you. I don't talk to my sister the same way I talk to you. The conversations we have are very different because of the nature of our relationship, how well we know each other. And you always have to take that into consideration when forming relationships and forming, becoming a part of community. It's going in looking to understand other people.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. There's a lot there. We went from community to trying to understand someone's position.
I think that it kind of connects with community because communities are formed based on people having a similar understanding of who someone is. Even if it's for instance, I went to FSU. If I told you, I was if I see someone with an FSU shirt on, I may actually go up and be like, hey, you went to FSU? Or you like FSU? And we'll connect over that. And even if it's I don't have any understanding of who that person is besides the fact that they like FSU. And maybe that's all I need to bond with them over FSU. But also with that same person, if I then went to switch the conversation to politics, I don't have anything to understand what their take on it is, because the signs I've gotten from them right now are just, oh, he likes FSU. And when you join a community, for instance, I was a big, fangirl for One Direction, Justin Bieber, all of that. And when I was a part of those kind of online communities, you're all bonding over the person and maybe over their songs, but there's a level to it, Yeah. Different communities have different levels. So and you have you go in with an understanding of at least an idea of why you're connecting with that person. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to relationships too, I think we build communities around ourselves sometimes, just when I was in college, I became friends with my friends. I became friends with the people I was friends with because that sounds so repetitive. I made my friends by working at Target.
Yeah.
Like, I met them at Target. That's how we became friends. And at first, that's how we bonded, was like over the fact that we all worked at Target. We all had the same complaints, yada, yada, yada. But then we also took steps in all of our relationships to get to know each other better, to fully understand who each other was as a person, and that then deepened like our friendships. And then we had different levels that we could also connect on. But there's always that first level, you know, that brings the first connection. Mm-hmm. And then it just kind of goes on from there.
That anchor, you know.
Yeah.
The anchor was your guys's. You know, you guys worked at Target. That was like kind of like the anchor.
Yeah.
That held that group together and still does. I mean, not to say it still does to this day. Obviously.
Well, yeah, because I don't think it's the anchor. I think it's like because like none of us work at Target anymore, but like it started with that.
Yeah.
And then it obviously transformed. And maybe some communities, they're simply just the simplest form of relationship is just bonding over one single thing. You don't have to bond over everything. You can have completely different opinions than your friends, but there is that one thing that you agree on, you know. And it's like, for instance, like there could have been people in the Miata community that you might have not hung out with otherwise, but they had true. That bond.
Yep, I was gonna say, yeah, I was literally gonna say that and that's a fact, because that's true. There's people that you would never see yourself around, and then it's like, oh, like you get to learn about who they are, and not everyone in that community had the same viewpoints on life. Like there are older people, younger people, different everything, you know. So yeah. But however, that community is what drew you together. There's motorsports that do that too, like people who love monster trucks, you know, like there's
Monster Jam.
Yeah, Monster Jam or NASCAR or Indy 500.
I will never understand the NASCAR community.
Honestly, NASCAR, not to get sidetracked here, but NASCAR races are pretty fun once you go. Like
my mom's been to one.
Or F1. F1 has one of the
huge one right now.
It's been huge for years.
No, it's gotten bigger with Netflix having that show F1. Like people are like,
what it's about.
I saw this TikTok where this guy was interviewing people at F1 races. He was like, I literally am not into cars, but I saw the show F1 and I had to check this out.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I feel like that's a rise of like a trend too. I feel like trends kind of build like communities. Like the reason Lululemon got such like a popular following is because people all started talking about it. And I feel like now we have a greater ability to create these communities because we can share stuff online, whereas before it was like really word of mouth and having to find like the right people. So I feel like it is easier to create those communities. I also was in college, before I decided what my major was going to be, they had these things called FIGs in the freshman interest groups, and you joined one based on what your interest was, and mine was creative writing. So I got to be a part of a FIG. A lot of our classes were together, so you were in the classes with the same people, and you also had like this kind of like almost like home loop type class where you all got to like connect, and there was a TA that would like talk, and it was like 50 minutes, I think. And I got to meet some people that I probably wouldn't have met otherwise because we all went very different ways in our major. I had some people that wanted to be in film, some people that went into like other English majors, and like had it not been for that group, I might have never come across them. And I think now it's cool, even like I still follow there's this guy named Adrian that was in the FIG, and I still follow him on social media, and it's so cool. He actually is the one that works for Gary Vee, and I think that's so fucking awesome. And like he's living his dream, and it's so cool to see like that evolution of like knowing him freshman year and then seeing like how everything changed. And it like, you know, maybe I'm not like super close to them, but it definitely was nice at the time to have like, especially when you're in college, like getting into that college environment, having people around you that like were in the same position made it less scary. And I think that's the other thing is like communities I was reading are supposed to make us feel safe. Like we feel safe amongst a community of people.
I would definitely agree with that. Not to say I felt safe around all these people, but
yeah, safe around all the Miatas.
Yeah,
the Miatas gave you a sense of comfort. So you're just dreaming of Miatas.
This is just the last thing I'd say about Miatas or car communities in general. But I mean, I've been away from the car community in general for like years now, but I've just recently seen a lot of like really crazy stuff that's happening, and it's gotten out of control. So yeah, I would probably not appreciate being in it now. So not in the Miata community, just the car, some portions of the car community, just people doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and this is actually a good segue to like the fact that, yeah, communities are important and it's really cool to be a part of one. But then you do have, like you said, those niches or those people that end up creating these little cliques that end up doing some really dumb stuff. In the car community, for example, there's these people that like to they're called street takeovers, where it happens fairly often in LA apparently, where they take over a whole street and like in public and like block traffic and do donuts in the middle of the street, hurt people. People have died because of this.
That's crazy.
And yeah, and it's like, come on, dude, like you're making everyone else look bad. You know? It's like
that one person that ruins it for everyone.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that it's ruining the car community in general. Like it's making it look like some people apparently just like when they go meet up at these places that we used to meet up at here in town, like the cops come and roll through, like, you guys need to leave. Like before they wouldn't say anything about like, 25 cars parked in a parking lot, but now it's like apparently a frowned upon now, a hazard just to be parking.
Yeah.
But yeah, side note. But yeah.
But I think I do want to touch on too is just like when you don't have a community, it can feel isolating.
Yeah.
Or like when you have that feeling, a sense that you might have people around you, but you don't feel like you do, and you might feel like a black sheep. And I think that's a difficult feeling to have. I talked about earlier how I always felt like I was a black sheep, and I feel like you and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah, I feel like we do. We end up bringing it up somehow in the podcast.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's the feeling that someone gets, or you get, or I get, from not like it's not like we're self-isolating.
Yeah.
Yeah. You work from home.
Yeah.
I'm freelancing here too as well, and we're doing a lot to just save and not spend money. So a lot of it we don't go out and drive across the state anymore.
We don't do some of the things that we used to do.
Yeah, and some people make it seem like, oh, you guys just don't go out anymore and do this or do that. It's like, no, it's just like we physically can't right now.
We don't have the option.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fun to drive across California and go to the beach, or go to the park every now and then, or like we used to go often to Sunset.
I always like try to reflect on like why I feel the way I do, and like why do I feel like I'm such like an outcast, and like not that I don't have this sense of belonging. And some of it I do think can be in my head, but I also think that there's this sense of like when we've talked about people have a certain perception of you, and like I've also realized I'm no longer willing to try to change people's minds. Like if you're gonna think that of me, you can. Like you don't have to try to get to know me anymore, because clearly like I can't do anything to change your mind about me. And I think that can be like, it's something that you need to do because you need to protect your peace, but it's also very hard to know, especially if it's people that you want to care about you, to know when like people aren't good for you. And I think when it comes to having a good community, the people within that community also matter. Who you choose to surround yourself with matters, because you start to like pick up things, from the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah, you start to, I don't know if the word mimic is the right word to use here.
No, I would say like there's a, yeah. I mean, it's the whole basis of like why that lady at Theranos thought was successful for a while, because she was mimicking a very successful person.
Yeah. But I mean, like, you're not directly like for example, like I wasn't directly mimicking people that were part of the community. I just, I wouldn't say I was still myself within that community, but there are people that do.
But you pick up things like lingo, or like...
lingo. Funny jokes, things like that. Yeah, you're right.
So like you pick up things from people, and like sometimes you got to be cognizant of what you're picking up, how it affects you. And I think that's hard to like see when it's happening, of how your surroundings impact who you are as a person, especially if it's in a negative way. It's hard for you to look inward and say, how is this bad for me? Because some communities can, like, maybe the intention isn't bad, but it can be not necessarily good for what you need as a person, because we all do have those different needs. And, for instance, if you were someone who struggled with drinking, you might not want to hang around a bunch of people.
A bunch of alcoholics
that drink.
Yeah, that's
well,
true.
not even alcoholics. And it depends where you are on your journey. I know some people who are in that situation can be around people who choose to drink however much. But if you might be on if you're someone who's struggling currently, you might not want to surround yourself with those people because it's going to make it harder on you. You know, it's going to make it harder on you growing and becoming the person you want to be. And I think there's been a lot of points in my life where I've looked at who I'm surrounding myself with and said to myself, like, am I going to be able to do what I want with these people around me, or am I going to feel swayed to do something else? You know, it's kind of like peer pressure almost too. Like, you feel like because we want that sense of belonging and stuff, we might do things that we originally probably wouldn't have done otherwise, but we want to feel connected to someone.
Yeah, you wanted to feel connected either to the individual person or a community, a group of people.
Yeah.
And yeah, peer pressure or whatever the case
yeah,
is.
you want to you want to be one of the cool kids.
You want to be part of the cool kids club. You know?
Yeah, and like that can, depending on what age you are, like obviously I feel like I'm not being like super pressured now in my 20s, but when you're young and very fragile, like it can be hard to not get sucked into those things, especially because I feel like you aren't as self-aware at that age of like knowing what's good for you. Like when your parents tell you, I don't want you hanging out with that person, you can't understand why. You know, you can't understand. Like, I feel like I'm lucky because like growing up, there were probably some people I shouldn't have been surrounding myself with, but like I feel like I had these blinders on of like not letting it impact me. But there also could have been other people that if they surrounded themselves with certain groups of people, they might have gone down a different way. Like doing things that just weren't good, you know, and you've always got to be cognizant. And I feel like as an adult, you can separate some of it a little bit more. Like you can still be part of a group and not have to be like fully intertwined in it. But I think when you're young, you feel like the need to be fully intertwined. So like you can't separate like who you are and your morals to like a group, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you wouldn't, if you had a certain outlook on life, certain standards, I guess you probably wouldn't put yourself in a certain situation.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like we could probably now at our age go out and, you know, maybe hang out with someone like that doesn't necessarily have like the greatest intentions, but we can keep our relationship in the simplest form of not being like feeling like we have to do exactly what they do.
Oh yeah, no, I see what you're talking about. Yeah,
like we can go and hang out with them and like they may not be a cup of tea, but like we still can get along with them and like but not feel pressure to do exactly what they do.
Yeah.
But when you're young, you might feel pressure to do exactly what someone else that you're hanging out is doing to fit in. But as an adult, you can have like the kind of different levels of relationships of like knowing like, yeah, we're friends, but like I'm not going to do some of the stuff that I think you're doing is stupid.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like this has been a good episode. You know, it's very important to have people around you to support you, to connect with you, to make you feel like you belong. And I know sometimes it's really hard to find those. I currently am still trying to find the right group of people because now all of my friends are very spread across the country, which is so sad. But we aren't meant to be alone. I think that's the whole thing. It's like we're meant to bond and connect with one another and to, I don't know, I feel like bring good to others' lives.
Yeah, to be a positive impact on people, you know, be the ray of sunshine, as you say, Sunny.
I also think that finding the right group of people can help you better understand your own identity. And I think that's important, especially if you're going through a period of growth consistent period of growth. It's good to surround yourself with people who also want to help you uncover the potential within yourself. I know a lot of people I've surrounded myself with in the past have helped me do that and helped me uncover like the person that I needed to be. So yeah, you know, go out there, find your community. There's a community for everyone out there, I'm sure.
Yes.
And yeah, that has been today's episode. If you made it this far into the podcast, please like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple podcast, Spotify, or Google, whatever, please set up for automatic downloads. It will help us. If you can leave us
leave a review too, for sure.
Leave a review, tell us how much you love us. Tell us what Caesar should say, because sometimes he doesn't talk as much. Yeah, just we appreciate everyone who does listen, and we'll be back next week. This has been Growing Together with me, Sunny Vasquez.
And me, Cesar Santos.
We'll see you Monday.
See you later.